Hey team, hope everyone is well. This will be the first short video we'll do in a series of videos talking about habits. Essentially at the moment, everything obviously has been disrupted from our daily routines. So better understanding, what habits are, how we can better form habits to either, break bad habits, create new, more sustainable habits is going to be definitely something worthwhile for us to adhere to more of a long-term plan. So let's start with team understanding what a habit is. So essentially a habit is a behavior that is repeated enough that it becomes automatic. Okay, and the best, example I can give is your morning routine. So everyone's going to have their own specific morning routine from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to your desk for work. Obviously now we're all pretty much working from home, or if the moment you go to your car to then do your commute. You'd probably feel like there's a bit of a lapse in time. Okay, the reason being is the brain and body essentially going into autopilot mode. Okay, just because you perform that morning routine so many times repeatedly before that it doesn't require much thought process. Okay, it's an ingrained behavior, it's an ingrained routine, it's become a habit. Okay, so essentially what it does, and forming habits across our day, is it allows us to free up, our thought process for other tasks. Okay, so the body naturally wants to, establish these routines and have these routines. Now, seems like a really good thing, yes, but when when it becomes problematic, I should say, is that the mind and brain can't establish between what is a good habit and what is a bad habit. Okay, so for us, better understanding how habits are formed and how we can sort of manipulate what's called a habit loop, which we'll go through shortly, to then better reshape these habits to work with us opposed to against us. Okay, let's now delve into the habit loop. So like we said before, the habit loop essentially is the backbone to how all habits are formed. Okay, and there's some key components within it that allow us to reshape, existing bad habits or create new, more sustainable habits. So the first thing we're looking at is a cue, okay, which is something that's going to trigger and initiate our want and desire to be able to perform the routine. Okay, so once that trigger is there, then we lead to, again, that desire to perform the routine. So the routine is essentially that behavior or habit that we perform. Now, this routine is then going to lead to the reward. Okay, and the reward is satisfying that need that's been triggered by the cue. Okay, and this is where it becomes a little bit problematic in the sense that the brain and mind doesn't know how to distinguish between what is a good habit and what is a bad habit. Okay, it just sort of gets that, okay, did that relieve some sort of desire, satisfy that craving from the initial cue. So let's dig a little bit deeper into, each individual component which makes up this habit loop. So let's first look at the cue. So as we mentioned before, that's anything that's going to trigger the habit or that routine. So it can be one or it can be multiple of these things. So time of day, location, emotional state, being bored, sound. So examples here are phone, ice cream truck, TV commercial. So in the instance of a phone, it could be the phone going off as that cue that triggers the routine and craving to want to be able to check your phone and see, the contents of the message. The reward is then you being satisfied that you've satisfied the craving to want to be able to check that, and now you essentially associate that going off of your phone as that you're getting a message. Okay, so again, it's just going to become automatic. As soon as that trigger of the phone noise going off, it's going to lead to that routine, you checking your phone to see what the context of the message is, and that's going to satisfy the urge of checking your phone. So when we look at the next thing being the routine, so that is that physical task that we are performing, so essentially the habit. That can be emotional and mental as well, so it's not necessarily just the physical, and then that's going to lead to the reward. Okay, so as we said before, this is satisfying that craving, that urge that is being triggered by the cue. So it's the benefit we gain from performing that habit and routine, and it helps the brain to figure out if this habit loop is worth remembering in the future. Okay, so again, did that satisfy the initial urge that was triggered by the cue? If it did, we're going to put that in the memory bank for later, because when that same trigger comes, then it's going to be, again, let's do that same routine to lead to that reward at the end. So again, over time, we're going to go into autopilot mode, and then a habit is naturally born. Okay, team, so let's now have a look at a few examples of a habit loop in play. So in this example, the cue or trigger is alone at night or can be boredom, which then is going to drive that, again, desire, that craving that's going to lead to the routine. And the routine in this case is going to the pantry, grabbing yourself a bit of a treat, working some Doritos, which is then going to lead to the reward, okay? And it's satisfying that craving of no longer feeling bored or alone. Okay, so again, with this, it's really important to understand what is that cue that's triggering the routine, which then is leading to that reward. The next thing, or the next habit loop we're looking at, is the cue, is the alarm going off, okay, which is going to trigger then the craving and desire to want to perform your hub at home workout, or you jump on the virtual group session, which is then going to lead to that reward, which again is satisfying that craving of the cue, giving you that self-satisfaction of the accomplishment of jumping on the session, and again keeping your routine going with your daily exercise. So with this, understanding that we can change habits and we can reshape this habit loop is really important, okay? So once you know the triggers and the rewards that drive your behavior, you can then begin to insert a new routine. So we can insert a new routine that's a little bit more, I guess, healthier, if you like, that's going to be able to drive some more sustainable long-term habits. So it does require a little bit of trial and error. So it's really important for us to know exactly what those triggers are in terms of the cues, but more importantly, to understand what reward, what craving we're trying to satisfy, okay? Because if we perform a routine that doesn't satisfy the craving, then again, the brain's not going to remember that for next time, okay? So it does require a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so let's go through an example here how we can, I guess, reshape that habit loop, starting with the habit loop on the left. So we can see here the cue or the trigger is you going, being at home and, for example, you've had a pretty rough day, you're feeling stressed, which then, leads to the craving for relief. And in this case, the behavior, the routine is going to be, going to grab yourself a bottle of wine and sinking into that, which is then going to, again, provide that reward, which is that craving of feeling de-stressed, okay? Now, again, like we said before, we can keep the cue the same and provide the same reward, but we want to be able to insert a new routine, a new behavior. So in this case, the cue is still the same. It's, again, being stressed. That's going to then lead to this behavior routine, which in this case now is reaching out to, could be a family member, could be a friend, to discuss and sort of tell them about your day, and then that's going to have the same reward at the end. Okay, so that craving for relief, that de-stress after a stressful day, we've been able to keep the cue the same, the reward the same, but we've entered in a new, I guess, more sustainable, healthier routine. So to quickly recap that, guys, you need to understand that habits are formed to make our lives easier. Okay, so again, the body wants to go into that autopilot mode. It requires less thought so that it can focus its attention on other tasks. And the biggest thing for us at the moment from, I guess, a trigger is going to be our environment. Okay, it's going to significantly influence our behavior just because at the moment our environment is not really going to change. Okay, so if we can understand and be aware of what our triggers are, so I want you in the next couple of days is actually write them down. Okay, so be aware what your triggers are, write them down, and understand what your rewards are. Okay, so what are you craving? What are you trying to satisfy by performing a specific routine? Okay, so once you can understand those two, then again, we can try and insert a new routine to have a bit more of a healthier habit loop that we establish. So from here, guys, what we're gonna do next is in our next little video on habits, we're gonna provide you with a simple set of rules that we can look to break bad habits, but also to create more sustainable good habits. So as always, team, if there's any questions, just post them below. I hope you got something out of it, but I look forward to presenting on the next one.